Good morning, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. Hope you're all doing very well today. Playing some more Golgari midrange for you in the modern format. The most fun we can have in this format, in my opinion. We're interacting, we're clocking relatively quickly, we're making a lot of really important decisions, and we're playing a lot of really cool, really individually powerful cards. So if you would like to see this format get more exposure, this archetype get more exposure, if you would like to support the content that I'm putting out, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and visit my Patreon page, linked to the description below. So, anyway, we are on the draw. We have lost the die roll, and in a blind game one, our hand is going to be between good and a nut draw. So, if they're the type of deck that plays to the board and plays things that die to Fatal Push, and that don't recur, so aka not a deck like Dredge, then our hand is completely spectacular. We have two copies of our best spot removal as far as creatures are concerned. Into Tarmogoyf, into Liliana. Our land base is really strong here. We have double black, double green, Treetop Village. Right now we cannot quite cast Liliana on curve if we're playing something on 1 and something on 2, but this hand against a creature deck is going to be spectacular. Again, against decks that die to Fatal Push. And even if they're playing, a controller, a combo deck that doesn't have many good targets for push, Treetop Village into Tarmogoyf into Liliana is really strong potentially against decks like that. So this is obviously a snap keep in a blind game one. Our opponent likes their 7 as well. Blood Crypt. Burning Inquiry. Okay, so this is Hollow One, and that's kind of bad for us, that Burning Inquiry, so we lost 2 lands and we didn't find any others. We're a 25 land deck. We should be able to still hit our land drops, but that's a little bit scary. And the stuff it gave us, it gave us a couple Tireless Trackers and an Inquisition. I'm pretty happy to lead on the Inquisition next turn, but otherwise, this hand is looking a lot clunkier than it once did, especially because I'm out of lands now. So that was a pretty bad Burning Inquiry for us. That said, our Tarmogoyf is already a 5/6, so that's a great thing. Now, they did lose a Hollow One to their randomized discard, and a Lightning Bolt, so those are both pretty bad ones to lose for them. The only real value they got is a Bloodghast. So, but they have another one in hand to play. Hollow One is on the field on turn 1, so we draw an Assassin's Trophy. I mean, that's an answer to the Hollow One, but we need to hit lands, and all we can really do here is fire off this Inquisition and see what they have left in their hand. So they have a second land, a pair of Faithless Lootings, and a Lightning Bolt. So, let's see here. We don't normally care that much about the card Lightning Bolt, but in this case, the best draw we can have is a Blooming Marsh next turn, or any untapped green land, because that leaves us Tarmogoyf and Assassin's Trophy. It would be better to play the Tarmogoyf turn 2 and not have to play the trophy turn 2, because that lets us hold off on ramping them for a turn, and it also lets us, just naturally wall off the attack and then start clocking ourselves. The following turn we can attack with the Goyf, trophy the thing. It's going to be great. But in order for Goyf to not just trade with the Hollow One plus the Lightning Bolt, we would need to take the Lightning Bolt. So is that worth it, assuming that we need to hit a land to stay in the game, and therefore taking the Lightning Bolt to preserve our Tarmogoyf is the play? Otherwise, we're taking a Faithless Looting. They have another one to cast. They have redundancy. Obviously, they can flash back whichever one we take. So yeah, I think we pretty clearly want to take away the Lightning Bolt there, even though it's not normally a card that you'll see me taking away with an Inquisition. I think that was the play. Yep, they get their Bloodghast back, and they're going to loot. Sure. They pitch another Looting and a Mountain. Alright, 2 unknowns in hand. We get hit for 4. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is so bad. So bad. So, the deck Hollow One, I don't have any problem with anything it does, except this stupid card, Burning Inquiry. You may have noticed a recurring theme with me. I despise cards that generate non-games and that take away decision points. Like, the outcome of a Burning Inquiry is not in either player's hands, and it on average favors the Hollow One player, of course, because their deck is set up to absorb the effects of that quite well. Now, I will say the good news for us on Golgari is that normally this card isn't that bad for us. It's not like we're a combo deck getting our win conditions, randomly discarded out and having our hand totally ruined. We get a lot of value out of huge graveyards with stuff like Tarmogoyf, and we have the right balance of lands, and, our stuff is not so synergy dependent that it can usually ruin our day. But even a deck like ours that can actually benefit from Burning Inquiry to the point where I think they're supposed to side it out against us, it can still just generate, totally randomized non-games like this. It's not over yet, but not having a land drop here is so bad. So all I can do is Inquisition. I see a Goblin Lore and a Street Wraith. Well, only one take there. It's the Goblin Lore. And we have to pass. Now, if we can find a green land, we can play our Tarmogoyf and still potentially stabilize. It's not over, but man, was that a setback. They're going to loot away a couple of lands. Looting is so good in these types of scenarios, just getting rid of some of the unneeded cards, digging them to more action, and ooh, here's where our own land base comes back to bite us. The good old Treetop Village just not letting us cast our Goyf quite yet, so we're poised to take another big hit this turn. Let's see what the opponent does. Another Faithless Looting? Sure, you got it. They're going to pitch a Bloodghast and a Flamewake Phoenix, okay? Couple of good cards, but they need a land to take advantage of them to get the landfall trigger for Bloodghast and to have the mana to pay for this ability here, and they do not seem to have it. So they're going to swing. Now here, I think I pretty clearly have to push the Bloodghast, because number one, we just don't want to take the damage here. And number two, like, we are basically on the Tarmogoyf or die plan next turn, and, if we... the Bloodghast is going to get to come back if they have a land. There's just no way around that. Like, that never feels good to Fatal Push a Bloodghast for that reason. But, like, we just have to play to our outs, and our out is them not having a land. All they can do next turn is return the Phoenix, and then we have walled off their Hollow One with a Tarmogoyf, and it potentially gives us time to stabilize. So, we push the Bloodghast here, fully knowing that it's only a temporary solution. And we draw a forest. Man, that's just a little rough, because if we drew a black land here, it actually might be pretty tempting to just play Liliana, edict away the Hollow One, get her on the field, and then they don't have a ferocious... They don't have anything with power 4 on the field to return the Phoenix. Now, maybe we should be trophying the Hollow One for that reason. But the big problem with that is if they just find a land, they're just Bloodghasting us. So I think, it's really tough. Our lands have been so awkward this game, and it's because of that Burning Inquiry. So I think we still have to play the Tarmogoyf here. We can bluff another Fatal Push. That's about the best we can do. And right on cue, our opponent rips a land off the top. Yep, we're just dead. We're just pretty dead. They're gonna play a Flameblade Adept too. That's just another evasive attacker. Sure, get the Phoenix back. If they just swing out with everything that can swing out, we're dead. They might hold back the Hollow One here, which they do. Okay, so we're still technically not dead, but in game one we don't really have an out to this. But we'll play it out. Yep, draw another Tireless Tracker. Scoop it up. So that was quite brutal. Our hand was really nice. Now, Fatal Push is not, of course, the best card in this matchup, so as I said in the beginning, not every deck is going to be one where Fatal Push shines, and that was certainly the case against Hollow One. That said, literally just turn 2 Tarmogoyf would have been amazing in this match if, assuming they still Burning Inquiry, but we did not lose both of our extra lands. Like, that would have been that would have been so different, but as it was, we got land screwed for just long enough for them to pile on the damage, and the stuff we drew off the top, triple Tireless Tracker, not exactly helpful. So, yeah, Burning Inquiry, not my favorite card in the Modern format, that is for sure. But that's okay. You know, Hollow One, it is a tough matchup, but I think our specific Golgari variant with Tireless Tracker and Taziger is really nice, specifically because Taziger is one that thrives in this matchup. You can usually cast him for very cheap. He outsizes Hollow Ones, and he is, of course, a source of card advantage if the game gets grindy as well. And the fact that we don't have Confidant, our land base is so painless, means that they have, you know, some more acreage to cover in terms of actually getting us down from 20 than against more painful decks. That said, they can still obviously do it. It's still a tier 1 deck. Hollow One's still really good, and Burning Inquiry can randomly get us, so that's what happened there. But let's head over to game 2 and see if we can get him back once we're kitted out with some nice sideboard tech. Alright, my friends, game 2 on the play against Hollow One, and our hand, I mean, we have only 2 spells, but the 2 spells are spectacular. Nile Spellbomb is going to clear out their graveyard, undoing a lot of the setup work they do in the early turns while cantripping along the way. Also getting an artifact type in our graveyard for Tarmogoyf. This card is so good in this matchup. And Maelstrom Pulse is, of course, very nice. There are progressions where they play out 2 Flameblade Adepts early on. I'm very happy to 2-for-1 those. Of course, if they dump out a couple of Hollow Ones, this is a spectacular answer to that. Even just 1-for-1ing a huge Hollow One or Gurmag Angler, totally fine. So our 2 spells are great. We have 5 lands, no utility out of our lands. That is very bad. Maybe they'll Burning Inquiry us into some more higher spell density. I don't know. I think I'm supposed to keep this, but, you know, it's obviously a little bit light on the old gas. We're going to lead on a Blooming Marsh. We'll play out the Nile Spellbomb. It is possible that they have, like, I don't think they showed us green lands game 1, but they might have a Micro Splash for green, which usually is just basically for Ancient Grudge. And it's possible that they have that. It's possible that they bring that in. You know, that's one thing. That's fine. I would rather get this out because I think they're more likely to have a discard effect and or a Burning Inquiry to randomly shuffle our hand. So I think we're supposed to play that out there, although there is a minor concern that it could get hit with an Ancient Grudge. They're just showing me black and Faithless Looting, sure. So, no Grudge, at least for now. And they loot away Phoenix and Lightning Bolt. Okay. Looting away Lightning Bolt is interesting. It makes me wonder what else is in their hand. And, of course, Phoenix is a high-value card. Ooh, Scavenging Ooze is a heck of a draw. Absolute heck of a draw. So, what do we do here? Obviously, we have a few choices. We can play land, Scavenging Ooze, pass. We could Spellbomb them, cantrip, and pass. Or we could play really cautiously, because this looks almost like a bait to me. Like, yeah, you know, I've got some value in the yard. Go ahead and blow that Spellbomb. I know you want to. You know, I think we can afford to be a little bit more patient there. And they, of course, have showed us Lightning Bolt, so I'm also a little bit leery to play out the Scavenging Ooze. Again, we risk it getting discarded or Burning Inquiry, but in this case, I kind of like just being really patient with both of my effects and passing, because right now, like, they don't get any value out of the yard this turn. So I get to pass, I get to be cagey and cautious, and I get to still have this able to be activated, and I get to cantrip with it, and that is all good. I'm kind of forcing them to overextend, kind of like how you force a creature deck to overextend into a Wrath effect. We're kind of trying to force the Hollow One deck to overextend into the graveyard, or indeed onto the board. So they're going to go Flameblade Adept into Faithless Looting, sure. They pitch an Angler, which is very interesting, and a land. Okay. There's still nothing that particularly compels me to hit the Nile Spellbomb, except to just keep their graveyard low for the purposes of them not being able to cast a Delve threat. but they just looted away a dealt threat. Maybe that means they have another one and I should fire it off, but I still think I want to be cagey. We still have the pulse to answer an angler, so yeah, I think I just pass here. We're drawing more lands, which is quite poor. And once again, you know, same incentives apply. They're not showing me anything I really care about. The best they can do out of this graveyard right now is potentially a Faithless Looting, which, again, is kind of forcing them to extend further into the graveyard. So, I'm just going to pass. I'm not under any pressure yet. Might take a big hit from the Flameblade Adept. And, yeah, I sure am. Here comes a Burning Inquiry. Alright, well, fair enough. I lose a Swamp, which is fine, a Scooz, which is bad, and a Tazagar, which is bad. You know, don't think this card should be in against me post-side, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know much about Hollow One, and, you know, because I didn't see one for the first few turns, didn't think it would happen to us, but it did, and they give us another land and an Inquisition. Not great. Not great stuff. But they lose a Hollow One of their own, so no free Hollow One, at least not that one. They lose a land and a Goblin Lore. Alright, there's a free Hollow One. Flamewake Phoenix. Alright, so they're moving 2 attacks. So now's my time. I crack the Spellbomb. I cantrip. I clear out their whole graveyard. Get a lot of good stuff out of there. And I draw another land. Pretty poor. Pretty poor to draw another land there. But sometimes that'll happen. So, getting hit for 4. You got it. And we draw yet another land. Now, this is just a little bit absurd. We're flooding pretty badly. That Burning Inquiry, losing these 2 things, that was just rough. That was just rough stuff. They've got 3 cards in hand. I think I have to lead on the Inquisition here. Of course, I can still play a basic land and then Maelstrom Pulse the Hollow One afterward. And I see a Goblin Lore and double Fatal Push. So they ended up with a stacked hand after that Burning Inquiry. Man, that's a little bit tilting. But what do we do here? Well, you know, my first instinct was to take Fatal Push, because that's obviously a great answer to our best creature, which is Tarmogoyf. Now, that's definitely true, but this Goblin Lore is going to rebuild their graveyard. It's a toss-up. I kind of like taking the Goblin Lore, and, you know, right now I don't have anything to Fatal Push anyway. I just have a pair of Hissing Quagmires as my threats. If I can induce them to push the Quagmires over the next couple turns, I guess that's fine with me. I also could draw more discard spells to take away the Fatal Pushes before they can use them, whereas next turn they're obviously going to snap off this Goblin Lore. So even though Fatal Push is a strong card, obviously, against us, I think I'm supposed to take the Goblin Lore there. Tough call, though. And yep, we'll play out a Forest. In case we draw a Scavenging Ooze, we get as many green sources down as we can. And kill the Hollow Boy. Pass to you. They just find a mountain. I think they might have wanted to hold that in hand for the purposes of Bloodghast, or maybe pitching it to a Liliana, something like that. Baiting discard, who knows. And we draw yet another land. We are officially flooded. We are officially flooded. Burning Inquiry. Alright, for once I'm happy to see the Burning Inquiry. We had literally, what was it, 5 lands in our hand? 4 lands in our hand? So the Inquiry gets 2 lands out of our hand and a Duress, which could have taken a push, but I guess that's fine with me. And we find still more lands, but a Tarmogoyf. We found a Tarmogoyf. Thank you for that beautiful reshaping of our hand. That said, they lost a Fatal Push, a Leyline of the Void, so it's good to know that's in their deck, and a Street Wraith. So they still have 1 Fatal Push in hand. We might not be able to quite expose our Tarmogoyf yet. We will have to see what we draw. But we take another hit for 4. Oh, wow. Beautiful draw, Collective Brutality. So I think I actually want to escalate for all 3 modes here, which is not something you do every day against a deck that's not called Burn. But here, you know, killing the Flameblade Adept sounds good to me. Taking away the Fatal Push sounds good to me. And throwing away one of our many lands to drain them for 2, I guess that's fine with me too. So, yeah, we're going to go all in. Pitching our 2 lands that are not a creature land. and escalating really aggressively. Nice. They just have a swamp left in hand, so there goes the Fatal Push. And the way has been cleared for our 6-7 Tarmogoyf. So we were looking pretty behind the 8-ball, but their Burning Inquiry was not even that great for us, but it did find us a Tarmogoyf. The follow-up draw of Collective Brutality was what really made that whole sequence good. They find another Flameblade Adept, sure. Now they're going to sandbag the swamp. I think that's a good play. Verdant Catacombs, okay. Not a good draw. We're back to flooding, but... So we have 6 lands. This has a total of 4 mana invested, 3 to activate, 1 to tap. So playing this out, the only good reason to play that out is if I draw another land next turn, I can activate double Quagmire. But I don't think that's quite worth it. I think I'd rather hang on to this to bait a discard spell, to escalate a Brutality, all the usual stuff, and of course Tireless Tracker's favorite fuel is a Verdant Catacomb. So we'll hang on to that, and we'll just fire up a Quagmire, hit them for 8, pass the turn. They have a Bloodghast. Fair enough. Not the scariest thing I've ever seen, and they're just going to hit us for 1. We draw another Tarmogoyf. Alright, this is looking pretty good. This is looking pretty good. Fire it up, get in for 8. Bloodghast cannot block. Then we will throw down our other Goyf and say, alright, you better have something pretty sweet here. Flameblade Adept. Okay. Not exactly what you were looking for, and they're making us play it out, but of course because Bloodghast cannot block, they're just dead on board. And we had a third Tarmogoyf in hand just for good measure. So the Tarmogoyf train showed up right at the end of the game. And yeah, this card is just disgusting in the matchup. We got the Fatal Pushes out of their hand. Well, they got one out of their own hand with a Burning Inquiry, and then that beautifully timed Collective Brutality took care of the other, and then it was just Tarma time. And yeah, 6/7s, if they don't have Fatal Pushes, definitely a tough one for the Hollow One deck to tangle with. So yeah, that was an interesting game. We had a couple interesting decisions early on, specifically whether or not to slow roll our Scavenging Ooze and or our Nile Spellbomb activation. Now, I think our cautious play was correct. I was not expecting a Burning Inquiry. I think Hollow One players will on average be siding those out, but again, not an expert. I could be wrong about that, but that is my understanding. But specifically waiting to activate this Spellbomb was really nice. You know, maybe we were supposed to just play out the Ooze, because even if they trade away a Lightning Bolt or a Fatal Push with it, that's fine with us. It's still a 1-for-1 trade. But, you know, I didn't really plan for the Burning Inquiry, and we did lose it to that. Would also have been nice to just slow roll it and play it, you know, after we've cracked our first Spellbomb, they start to rebuild the graveyard a little bit. Then maybe turn 5, we play the Scooz, eat a bunch of stuff. That was the idea anyway, but with that plan got ruined by a Burning Inquiry. But I think slow rolling the Spellbomb was pretty huge. We forced them to spend a lot of turns, a lot of resources. Of course, they go down on cards for the Faithless Loot and cast out of the hand. So all of that, and they got a nice big graveyard, but they didn't really commit too fully to it, so they kind of had to keep half committing to it with repeated lootings. And then we finally cracked the Spellbomb, cleared out the whole graveyard, took away a Phoenix and a bunch of other stuff. And then, you know, Burning Inquiry made the game a little bit scary for a little while, but we had the answer to the Hollow One, and then eventually we found our threats that were just way too big for what was left over of their army to handle. So, pretty interesting game, pretty cool game, and yeah, let's go to Game 3, see if we can do it while we're on the draw. Alright, my friends, Game 3 against the Hollow One, and we are on the draw. Our hand is pretty sweet. We've only got 2 lands, which is normally something that we say, we pretty much need to hit a third with this deck most of the time. But at least with the spells in our hand, all 5 of them can be cast on 2 lands. We've got double black, we've got painless mana, that is all good. Nothing enters the battlefield tapped. We've got turn 1 Inquisition or turn 1 Nile Spellbomb, depending on what's good. Discard is kind of medium against Hollow One. You'll side some number of it out, but Of course, an early Inquisition to take away a Goblin Lore or, you know, any other discard enabler is quite nice. Goblin Lore is the realistic target now that we're on the draw, but still, definitely nice to see that. Definitely nice to see 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate. Fatal Push is okay, but in conjunction with these graveyard pieces can be a permanent answer to a creature. And of course we have a way to remove a hollow one or a delve threat. So this hand is great. Don't Burning Inquiry me, bro. Okay. They're going to open on Leyline of the Void. Yep, that's a pretty solid one. Like, it's not backbreaking against us or anything, but if they assume that we are mulliganing aggressively toward our Graveyard Hate, or at least prioritizing hands with Graveyard Hate, the fact that they get to shut off our graveyard and we are pretty much forced to clear out their graveyard to the best of our ability, well, that just means our stuff like Tarmogoyf is going to be a lot smaller overall. So I get it. I get Leyline being in against us. It's not a hard hoser or anything, but it's a solid one. They just fetch in the main phase for some reason. I guess they wanted to F6 and then they'll pass. Now, this is a draw. Surgical Extraction. This is really nice. This allows me to just really confidently develop my board, play along the curve, and also have instant speed, 0 mana graveyard interaction up. And here, you know, obviously, like I said, we can Spellbomb or we can Inquisition, but here we definitely want to Inquisition, because now we get to decide, we get to look at their hand. Again, we're not going shields down against their graveyard no matter what they have, because we do have this extraction, and we get to look at their hand and see, alright, do we need to play around removal for the Skoos? Do we need to play around removal for the Spellbomb? And, of course, we get to take away potentially a really nice enabler. And yeah, well, I mean, they've got 3 really nice cards, so this is actually going to be a tough one. I think Faithless Looting is the one we for sure do not want to take, just because they can flash it back later, and it's a little bit less impressive right out of the gates. And I can see why they didn't cast it last turn either, because their hand is so good they didn't really want to pitch anything. So it's either Goblin Lore or Collective Brutality. Now, Goblin Lore is the pretty obvious take in some ways, but if we take the Goblin Lore, they might just open on the Brutality next turn and look at our hand, and then they take away our Surgical Extraction, and all we can do is extract the Goblin Lores in response, which is not very good, honestly. It's okay, but it's certainly not a primary target. But here's the thing. So, will they actually Brutality next turn? I would say probably not. I would say if we take away the Goblin Lore, they're more likely to simply cast a Faithless Looting next turn, and then maybe we don't get hit by the Brutality. So for that reason, I'm going to take the Goblin Lore away. I think that's the right play, but it's certainly one that merited, thinking it through. Yep, so there goes the looting. They're going to pitch a Lightning Bolt and their other Wooded Foothills. You got it. Alright, no need to quite do anything yet on their end step as far as Surgical goes, so we're still looking a little bit land light. Of course, with this ooze around, we want to hit more land drops. That said, Assassin's Trophy's a fine draw. It's giving us more outs to big stuff, and maybe an out to Leyline of the Void if we decide that's a good play. So obviously we play a land here, and now I think it's time to play the Nile Spellbomb. But again, they don't have anything in the yard right now that really merits us firing off the Spellbomb aggressively. I think we're supposed to just hold this up and pass. If they do have a Ancient Grudge style effect, we can always crack it off in response. Burning Inquiry, our old nemesis, is back again, so this is... this is really scary, right? Our hand is so good, we don't really want to lose anything. Then again, we need to hit land drops. Maybe it'll give us some. I don't know. So the big question here is, do we Surgical Extraction anything in response to this Burning Inquiry? Well, the only real reasonable target to me is this Faithless Looting. Extracting the lootings is actually pretty fine. I think I prefer to extract, cards like Bloodghast or Flamewake Phoenix, but extracting the looting is definitely fine, but the other thing that I could do is just take the chance and hope my extraction stays in hand after the Burning Inquiry and hold it for a more opportune card and or time. So, really tough to say, but I ended up just kind of crossing my fingers and rolling the dice, and yeah, sure enough, I still have the extraction after all that, so that's good. They took away our Fatal Push, and then they took away the 2 lands we were going to draw. Pretty bad stuff, so we're still kind of tight on lands, but hey, our hand is still really strong, and we drew yet another answer to their permanent, so that's pretty good, right? And they lost Gurmag Angler, Bloodghast, and that Collective Brutality. Alright, fair enough. So their hand is totally unknown. Ooh, this is nice for us, right? So they get, if they had played a land out of hand, which I assume they don't have, we would not have really been able to deal with their Bloodghast, because they play the land, the trigger goes on the stack, we respond with our Spellbomb or whatever, then they can crack this Wooded Foothills in response to our activation, the Bloodghast still gets on the field. But now, I actually get to just hit him with a Spellbomb, and take the Bloodghast out permanently, and clear out that huge yard. And now I'm pretty happy to do this, right? Because, you know, even though the Bloodghast is the only direct threat in there, they still have eluding, they can flash back next turn, they still have a bunch of cards in there for delve threats. The bad news, though, is that when Nile Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, Leyline of the Void is a replacement effect, we don't get to cantrip here, so that's pretty poor. But otherwise, I think that was the right time to hit the Spellbomb. So they just take a land tapped. Maybe they had an Angler in hand, something they were going to cast. It looks like it if they were fetching main phase like that. But now they just take it tapped and they'll pass. So we draw Collective Brutality. All right. Might not be a bad one, but for now it's not the land we needed. I think we just play out the use. It's our only threat. It's our only real proactive play. You know, maybe they'll just bolt it or push it, but I think that's what we're supposed to do. They play a land, and they will pass. Wow, you know, minor miracle, I guess, that they don't have a removal spell, and they don't have a looting style effect, or discard style effect, so pretty good for us. Alright, we're drawing a land. We kind of want more green sources than black at this point, but we'll take it. Get in with our Grizzly Bears. Opponent takes it. Alright, you know, we could be mana efficient and Maelstrom Pulse the Leyline of the Void. We could get curious and spot check their hand with Collective Brutality. I don't really like either, and here is why. So, if they had anything we cared about with Brutality, they would have used it last turn, whether it be a removal spell on the Ooze, or, you know, a Goblin Lore, Faithless Looting, something like that. You know, they just would have done it last turn instead of just passing. So spot checking doesn't do anything here. We want to save this to kill a Flameblade Adept is probably its best use case, or just, you know, drain at some point. Maelstrom Pulse the Leyline is actually just fine to me, but I think I'd rather play it cautious, play it safe, and we can just trophy it on the end step if they still don't do anything. They're going to cast a Bloodghast. Okay, fair enough. Alright. So now I think I do wish to trophy away this Leyline. It's going to ramp them, but we're beyond the point where that matters. We do so at a time where there's no landfall trigger for them to benefit from. So that's a nice window to get that off the field. And we've now got some cards in the yard, and right on cue we draw Tarmogoyf. Okay, so that's not too bad. But here, I think the play is to just kill this Bloodghast, gobble it up with the use. Pretty happy to do that. Gain a life, grow our Scoozer, hit you for 3. Again, we're pretty lucky here that they don't have a bolt or a push, and they didn't have a discard enabler in hand. I don't really know what they could have. Well, they have a Street Wraith, at least for now, so they'll cycle. They'll cycle again. Okay. Getting a little painful, but... Okay, there's a hollow one. So I guess they had a hollow one dead in hand, and now, you know, they could have hard cast it anyway this turn, but now at least they get to cast it for free. And what else do they have? They will fetch They do have green, so good to know. Oh, looks like our opponent misclicked because they have a land they shocked in, a land still in the pool, and they cast the Angler. So a little bit of a misclick for our opponent. We'll see if that 2 life matters. But wow, that's what they had in hand. They had a couple of big, fat fatties, and now, you know, that's a board. That's a board for sure, but hey, we're pretty happy we have all of these answers in hand. Inquisition, not so much a great draw. So here, just in the interest of mana efficiency, we're going to go ahead and pulse the bigger threat. We, of course, have to pass. We cannot attack into the hollow one, but he can't really attack into us, right? At least as things stand, because he's at 6 life. Definitely not very stable life total over there. All right, so Treetop Village is a pretty good draw, actually. We need to hit land drops. This is one of them, and it's not something we can use right now, but with our life total so low, you know, a really aggressive creature land here is potentially quite nice. So I think what I'm supposed to do here is just go ahead and trophy this thing out of the way right now. Doesn't let us use the Skoos, doesn't let us attack the graveyard at all, but we just get to get in with our 3/3, unless they have a removal spell, which they do not seem to. They do not. All right. Treetop Village and pass. You could have argued for an Inquisition there, but again, if they had anything we cared about that we could take with an Inquisition, they would have used it that turn. Alright, opponent looks like they've got another big something or other. Hard cast in the Street Wraith. Okay, fair enough. I am afraid that is not going to do it. Yep, we spot check their hand. They've just been sandbagging a land, and they are just dead on board. We fire up the Treetop Village. We get our one of our creatures cut down by the Street Wraith, but we will get in for exactly lethal. And he chooses not to block, gives us the style points of a clean attack for lethal. So, all right, good stuff. That was an interesting game 3. As you can see, all 3 of these games played out fairly differently. Frankly, that's the beautiful thing about our deck. I'm going to give us credit for these games playing out differently, because when we interact so heavily, we force more linear decks to play a more interactive game. We bring them up to our level in that sense, and therefore the games, you know, obviously there are still some non-games. Game 1 was kind of a non-game, you know. Either person can mulligan heavily, you know, that's just variance, that's just part of the game. But, you know, when we bring a really powerful interactive strategy to the table, the opponent kind of has to compete on our access, at least to some degree. And yeah, that just makes for a wider variety of games, some more challenging decisions, all that good stuff. So I think this was a pretty satisfying match in that regard. We had a fair amount of decisions that were not necessarily clear-cut. And I guess the big star of this Game 3 was actually our spot removal. Obviously, Nile Spellbomb was really nice. Scavenging Ooze was okay. You know, it clocked them and it did a little bit of work on their graveyard, but was not actually a big hoser. Like, we just kind of used it as a beat stick, and Assassin's Trophies and Maelstrom Pulses were the things that got us over the finish line by taking care of their gigantic threats. Of course, we had some good stuff in hand. This Tarmogoyf was getting nice and big. We just never had the need to deploy it over the last couple turns, and of course, we were having this Surgical Extraction hidden in hand, and that was a very powerful out if they had found some more gas off the top, you know, a Goblin Lore that was really, really strong or something like that. But as it turned out, they just kind of, you know, once we cleared out their graveyard, they were on more of a hard cast the fatties plan, and our spot removal really shines here. Again, Assassin's Trophy is such a strong addition to the deck. I think people are still underrating this card just a tad because it's a feel-bad card. Like, it feels bad to see it in the opening hand because you can't help but think, well, this should just be an Abrupt Decay. You know, because it's Abrupt Decay is strictly better in the opening hand against a not insignificant number of matchups. And even in the mid-game, it's like, you know, ramping them is never great, but just the sheer density of answers we have now for stuff like Gurmag Angler, Hollow One, even Street Wraith, definitely strong, and definitely does not warp our deck, because even though Trophy is suboptimal in some matchups, it still pulls its weight. It's still a reasonable card when it's not at its best. So, and of course, I'm a huge advocate for 2 Maelstrom Pulse in the 75, and we just have twice the chance to see it if we've got 2. So, yeah, definitely very happy with our spot removal there. The turn 1 Inquisition was pretty clutch too. Yeah, our opening hand was sweet. Burning Inquiry, kind of did it again, but we got there. So anyway, Hollow One. Hollow One is an interesting matchup. I kind of like the deck, except for that card, Burning Inquiry. I think it's a pretty cool deck, and it leads to some pretty interesting matchups overall. So I hope you enjoyed this particular iteration of the matchup, and yeah, not much more to be said about it. Pretty happy to pull off the win against a Hollow One. I don't think we're favored, but I do think we are within striking distance of it being a reasonable matchup. As always, we're getting better post side. So regardless, good games, well played to the opponent, and to the viewers, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your views, your feedback, your support, and stay tuned to the channel. We've got more gameplay coming down the road. Until then, have a great day. I will talk to you soon.